When I get home, I'll try and reconstruct what this one was.
Well, you will hear the beginning and you will see
About 20 minutes of it.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's a lot of talk.
Yes, that's a lot to talk. It sure is. Oy vey. Sometimes I can shoot myself if I do things like this. In this book that I've got, there's an interesting paragraph.
What book is that?
This is a book about the Death's Head, the SS. This paragraph talks about the Italians. And there's something there that I want to ask you about. Well, this would have been before the Nazis came.
We never wore the yellow star.
Yeah.
Never.
And according to this, it's because this Italian general told the Nazis...
I know General Geloso was well known at the time. No, there is no doubt that the Italians have protected the Jews in every possible way.
Yeah.
In every possible way.
Now, what is this Greek anti-Semitic organization, though, that they speak of that would have had caused riots?
I don't know.
This is something that I'd like to find out. If this is accurate at all, I'd like to know if there was an organization, because this would be under the Italians, not under the Germans. Would it have been a Hitler Union, or?
Only those who were known for having helped in this matter were a very small number of collaborators, very small number.
And under the Italians, I should think the collaborators wouldn't have had much business.
No, collaborators of the Germans, not of the Italians.
Later, after the Italians.
After.
Yeah.
Collaborators of the Germans, those were the only ones. Sometimes it was interpreters and definite collaborators. They were helping in the extermination of Jews.
So I'd like to find
There
out what
wasn't an organized group.
Yeah.
No.
This reference is taken from the memoirs of an Italian whose name was, what was his name? Let me find the, Storia degli Ebrei Italiani sotto il fascismo. I know
Storia
that my
degli
Italian
ebrei
accent is
italiani
off, but
del fascismo. Yes, it's the story of Italian Jews during the fascism.
well, I'll have to pick this book up. It'll be in Italian, and I'll pick it up.
It has not been Italy that has in any way implemented racial persecution.
I want to find out what this anti-Semitic organization was that this Italian is referring to.
I haven't heard of it. I haven't heard of it. There was not among the Greek population an anti-Semitic organization.
Let's see, there's nothing in this one. I just wanted to read this. Did you read this article about the Bulgarians? Their behavior in Cuba?
Yes. I was rather surprised, because my impression was that the Bulgarians were not anti-Semitic.
According to this, and to a couple of things I've read, they were simply saving their own skin, protecting their own.
Yes, according to this, they protected the Jews because they didn't want. No,
it was in their interest to do so.
No, it says here, yes, it says that they were not, as a people, they were not anti-Semitic, unlike Yugoslavia. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's rather that surprised me, that Yugoslavia they consider was anti-Semitic, but not Bulgaria. They never had a problem with their Jews.
No, I visited a man named Pesach in Kavala. Do you know Pesach?
Of course.
A huge man.
Yes.
He's 7 feet tall. He tells me that the Bulgarians turned in the Jews of Thraki after offering them an opportunity to become Bulgarian citizens and to betray the Greeks. He says the Jews said, no, we will not betray the Greeks, and we are Greeks and we will remain Greeks, and therefore the Bulgarians turned them in. Now this seems like a rather personal interpretation.
No, it's not a personal interpretation. I know that my husband was deported because of that.
He was offered an opportunity to become
Yes,
a
to
Bulgarian?
become a Bulgarian, and in court when he was being tried, he stood up and he said, I am a Greek, and you are here today, but the Greeks will come back. Our army will be victorious. Condemnation to death. And this was commuted because his father gave a lot of money. It was commuted to life imprisonment. But that was lucky. And Pesach was in Bulgaria in a forced labor camp for the same reason. And a lot of youngsters from Kavala.
All boys?
All boys, because they pledged fidelity to Greece.
Well, nothing I've ever read has given this version that the Bulgarians offered them a chance to save themselves by becoming Bulgarians and fighting against Greeks.
Pesach should know.
Yeah.
Pesach should know because he was at that time in Kavala, and probably this is what happened. I know that it happened in my husband's case.
He tells me that he is the only man who escaped from the labor camp. And then and someone else told me he escaped because the commandant of that labor camp was an old friend of Pesach's from years before the war. They had worked together, a Bulgarian who had come to Kavala, whom Pesach had befriended and helped. And that man turned out to be the commander of the labor camp and helped.
He's not. Those who survived in Kavala were all in a forced labor camp in Bulgaria. He's not the only one that survived.
He was the only one who escaped from the camp during the war. He got away through
out of the camp, you mean?
And how could a 7-foot man hide himself amidst all those people?
They must have noticed his missing also. I don't know. I really don't know that. I have never spoken with him about his war experiences. Although we are very good friends and we see each other, I know that he was in camp, just like my husband.
Do you think that he's a man who's reliable as a source, an honest man?
He likes to talk a lot, but
I just want to make sure that what I'm getting from him is...
He's on that I can confirm. That I can confirm. That I don't know if they told them in that way that if you turn and become Bulgarians, but it seems to imply that this should be accurate because the Germans said that we are only going to let free those who are Bulgarian nationals. So it might have been an attempt at a point to tell the Jews, why don't you? Another factor which surprised me is the fact that the king of Bulgaria, Boris, is represented as an anti-Semite, which he was not. On the contrary, Boris is apparently was a great friend of the Jews. And they say, that's what my husband tells me, because he happened to be in Bulgaria when all this happened, is that the king exactly tried to save his Jews, and he went to Germany to that effect, and they murdered him. He feels sure that the king was murdered by the Germans. It was not a fact that was confirmed in any way, but he returned, they found him dead. And the impression was that the Germans liquidated him.
This is something that should be straightened out, you know.
How? How?
I don't know how. All I can do is I can talk to everyone who knows anything about it, and I can present what I come up with.
And that's what Yad Vashem did in their studies also.
Yeah.
But
we all have to
they present that that he was an anti-Semite. Although they say his position was not clear, he was never. But my husband says that the impression among the Jews in Bulgaria was that he was a very good friend of the Jews, and that he went to fight for his Jews, and that is why the Germans liquidated him.
Well, this is what part of my work is for, is to try and straighten out things that might be wrong, or at least to add more knowledge to, like this
Another
article is a condemnation of Spain.
Yes.
It's not,
Yes.
It's not saying
Not
Spain.
exactly a condemnation, but they say that they did it but were not too willing to do it. And why did they do it? They are trying to find what is the reason behind it, because they do not doubt that the Jews, the Spanish Jews, were saved. They do not doubt it.
Except they say that more could have been saved if Spain had not been so wishy-washy.
No, because the Spanish Jews were saved. It could have avoided them suffering, he says, because if instead of taking them to the Bergen-Belsen camp and then having them stay 6 months in the Belsen, and the conditions that were not, of course, the conditions in the Auschwitz camp or in the Dachau camp, which were extermination camps, was very bad anyway. I remember that from testimonies of people with whom we are still friends, Spanish Jews, who had been in the Bergen-Belsen camp, they say, of course, they all lived in one ward, there was no heating, and there, I don't know how many degrees, there was still this calling them every morning at 4 o'clock for the appel, for the names. They didn't have food, they never received more than this soup with a few floating potatoes. They had to wash with, I don't know how many degrees below zero, with icy cold water. People who were used to, of course, this is hardship.
Yeah, well, many of them
And
died.
this is, there were people who died from hardship, or people who died from dysentery. Although in Bergen-Belsen camp there were a few that died. My uncle died, but he died from typhus.
I understand that typhus took a terrible toll among Greek Jews before they were deported. Salonika, Yanina, other cities that one winter, thousands
the
died of typhus.
the workers, because the Germans, before they implemented this large-scale deportation and extermination, had gathered the young people.
16 to 45 years of age.
Exactly. First they had them perform this gymnastic in the square called the Square of Liberty or Freedom.
I have a photograph of this, and a picture of Wehrmacht soldiers beating and abusing these people.
Exactly. And these people were taken to Larissa, to a forced labor camp. And there many died from typhus, from dysentery, from hardship, because some were young men of very good families who had never, they were spoiled, they were not used to this type of work. And there were a few that died. And the Germans said that in order to bring them back, they have to hire other laborers. And all the Jews gave all the jewel and money and gold and whatever they had to free this, to ransom these young people, who were returned to Salonika to be deported to Auschwitz later on.
Well, now, these forced laborers, were they all Jews or were they Greeks?
Only Jews, only Jews, only Jews.
Now, who ran this camp? Was it only Germans or was it Greeks?
No,
They employed Greeks?
No, the SS.
No Greek employees or
No,
supervisors?
nothing. It was just run by Germans.
And what were the security battalions here in Athens?
Which were Greek?
Yeah, I understand
The
they
Greek?
were Greeks. So Greek security battalions who worked for the Nazis. They had Nazi officers, but all the police.
A few, those that were the interpreters who worked with them.
But they're simply
Not all.
referred to as the security battalions. And I'm under the impression it's masses of people.
No.
Because I've been told about them coming around the houses, the security battalions looking for Jews. And
Yes,
security
those were a
battalions,
few
so-
interpreters who worked for the Germans. A few collaborators, a handful. It wasn't that many.
But where do they get the name security battalion? That indicates in itself a lot of men.
I don't know, I haven't heard this.
Yeah, something that's referred to quite often in my reference books and in my talks with people.
From my own experience, I haven't heard it, I haven't known. They were, of course, the collaborators with the Germans and mostly interpreters. They were. But you see, the Greeks, I said they were friends of the Germans and they liked the Germans. But during the war, they would fight them like lions. During that time, they would not find mercy from the Greeks. And that was a generality, not the exception were the few ones who were collaborators, but they were the exceptions and those were very few.
Yeah. Well, what was the general, you said the general attitude of the Greeks was anti-German. Here in Athens...
During that time.
Yeah, during that time. Here in Athens, an awful lot of Greeks stuck their necks out to save Jews. Was this the general
to save
reaction?
Jews, to save British soldiers?
Was this a general reaction, or were these exceptional people who would...
No, it was a general reaction.
Because in no other town did the Greeks try to help the Jews.
Oh yes, in Larissa, Volos, much more than here. Much more, of course.
I haven't been told about these.
Oh yes. Larissa and Volos very much.
That they hid people in their homes, or what?
Of course.
I know that in Volos, almost the entire community got away to the hills.
And Larissa also. And that's where they were hidden.
Well, now,
but it was hidden with the help of the Greeks.
What would be the reason for this Greek attitude of protecting Jews when Greek attitudes generally are somewhat anti-Semitic? Not actively, but...
They're not. I cannot say that. It would be unfair to say it.
But the church teaches it, the government practices it?
The church teaches it, and the government practices it for reasons of politics, but not. It's a policy towards Israel, but not towards its Jews. The government has never been anti-Semitic, never.
But we were talking about how they turned their back on the vandalism of the synagogue and how Jews are never considered to be Greeks and they're harassed.
Yes, but when the Jews were in danger, the Greeks did not stab them in the back, never.
But why did they go out of their way to help them? Did the church set the example?
The church set the example on one hand, and on the other hand, because the Greeks are freedom-loving, and they help those who are harassed and under persecution.
I understand that two men here in Athens were especially great. Police Chief Aver and the Archbishop Damaskis.
Damaskinos. Yes, that is correct. They set the pace.
Now, did most of the priests and most of the police follow their example? Or were they acting alone?
No, they were not acting alone. No, certainly not. Certainly not. Some did it for money, others did it because of humanitarian reasons. There was no doubt. It costed also a lot of money, but I mean, God would punish me if I said that I have given a penny to be hidden. It's not true. I must say that, and it's not people that I had known, because if it was friends that we have had, they felt that there was a different tie, that they liked us. It was people I didn't know, that I met only during that time, and they did not accept any money from us.
I've heard this mainly about Athens, but then I hear in Yanina, from Yanina Jews, that several days before the deportation of the Yanina Jews, the Rosenberg Committee met with the mayor, the archbishop, several city officials, the police, and told them that within a few days, the Jews of Yanina were going to be shipped out.
Yes.
And that not one of these people, not the archbishop, not the mayor,
nobody stood up. Yes.
Nobody warned the Jews that in a few days you're going to be deported, run for your lives. Nobody stood up to the Germans.
No.
They simply waited.
The same thing in Salonika. Same thing in Salonika. In Salonika they didn't have the cooperation, and yet there were many people who were real friends, and they didn't have it.
And knew in time to warn people to save their lives. Now what happened in Varia? I understand that in Varia it was very much like in Salonika. All the anti-Jewish laws were put into effect. The badges, the curfews.
Everything like in all of the north of Greece, all the communes, Kastoria, Edessa, Varia,
All these communities came after Salonika. Why didn't these people run?
Why didn't even some of the Salonicians run? Because they didn't know what was happening. They didn't know what it meant to go to the camps.
But by this time, everyone knew what had happened to the Salonika Jews.
Oh yes, but they didn't know that it was extermination camps. We found that out much later.
Yeah. But in some communities, they did flee. You know, some communities stayed put.
Some did not. It depended on the character of the people, on the people.
Yeah.
On the people. But
And their leaders.
one with the other were sort of influenced. And Salonika was a big city. The families lived very close together. There was this closeness. So and so is going, so we are going along. I remember I had a boyfriend at that time who lived in Salonika, and I had obtained through the Italian authorities permission to bring him over, to bring him and his family over.
To Athens?
To Athens.
Yeah.
Through the Italians.
Yeah.
There was an Italian officer that would go up to Salonika with his own private car, pick them up and bring them
Goodness
over.
sakes.
So I called him up. Of course I couldn't speak clearly. And said that, look, some Italian friends will come over so that you can come and visit us. And I think it is better that way, and don't go to the doctor to have the injection. I couldn't speak clearly. They didn't come. They went to the concentration camp. Because who would support the old people? Who would work for them? Who would help them? Here were two strong boys. They would go along in order to help the older ones. All the family was killed.
I've heard some stories about Salonika where Jews had Greek neighbors, and it was general knowledge throughout Salonika that the Jews were leaving Salonika. I've had people tell me who have survived the war that their Greek neighbors would come and say, give my daughter, your daughter's finery or pretty clothes and things because you're not going to need them where you're going. Or people walking in and starting to help themselves in the closets while the families were still in their houses.
Yes, that has also happened. That is true. A lot of, in our home when we left and left everything in there, it's the neighbors that came in and took it. And when we returned, they of course didn't want to give it back. And they said, rather than the Germans taking it, we took it. To them it seemed something so obvious. Why should the Germans take it? They would take it. And this is also what the attitude was in Salonika. It was not only in Salonika, it was everywhere. We gave our maids, we gave them. Because they said also, they said, why should you leave it for the Germans to take? Give us. And we filled trucks with things that we gave away to the maids that have been working in our homes. Μας τρόμαξες. Θα μου φέρεις και εμένα ένα γλυκό ρεστό τώρα. You want some more water? Some more coffee?
No more coffee.
No.
Part of my tummy is full. I'll keep the water though.
Εγώ θα ήθελα ένα γλυκό ρεστό.
that young man is going to get attacked one of these times. I guess it's, you know, there comes that
It was because speaking of these things, you sort of live in this atmosphere of fear and danger. You get carried away and...
Well, I'm jumpy anyway. I think partly from my military training and partly from everything else. But I was told too that after the Jews were deported, there was a new fashion among women of Salonika to have blouses made of the silk from talis.
No. Oh.
And
I haven't heard.
To make lampshades of Torah scrolls and such things.
No, I haven't heard that.
Someone saw.
It's the first time that you are telling. I saw women wearing
blue stripes, you know, from the talis and the sleeves.
I haven't heard that.
No?
No. And I would be surprised that a Greek would do it. Because a Greek respects anything that is religion, even if it is foreign religion. Our rabbi, for instance, if he goes to an official office or to any port authorities or anyone, he's a priest, can be a rabbi, he's a priest.
Yes, I've heard the Greeks
They
refer to him
wouldn't.
as a Jewish priest.
Oh yes, and they would kiss his hand very respectfully.
No kidding.
And I am positive that they wouldn't touch something that is religious, even if it is Jewish religion. They wouldn't touch it.
Well, that's very interesting to hear. But what about the fact that the Greeks were the ones who destroyed the cemeteries and took the stones to build?
Well, the cemetery is not something that is a religious thing.
But cemeteries
is not
are sacred to the Greeks and they're sacred to the Jews.
Yes, but not to a
Jewish.
point where a tombstone, for instance, because the Greeks, they inhumate their dead, and after two years they just take them out.
Oh, really?
Of course,
I didn't know that.
of course,
What do
it
they
is
do with
not.
them?
They cremate them or they put them in boxes. What remains, the bones.
I didn't know that.
Of course, a tomb is no more. It's not more than for 2 years.
No kidding.
Yes.
I had no idea about this. This is something completely new to me. So now.
So to them it is not a desecration. This has been 4,000 years. So what is it used for? It's useless anyway.
So that of course they couldn't understand the fact that to the Jew
It's sacred that they shouldn't touch it. But anything that comes out of a synagogue.
But what about the fact that the Greeks would move into synagogues and make them into houses during the war and since? I understand that 2 synagogues remain in Iraqville and are private homes now.
We have used our synagogue as a shelter for refugees.
Yeah.
That is not.
But for the Greeks to do so.
I told you the story of the chandelier.
Yes.
So, to the priest,
But
he
they
took
put
the
it in a
chandelier, he
picture.
put it in a house. That's the purpose of that chandelier.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Back during the occupation, a number of Jews were able to escape Greece via
Khalkis, and go over to Turkey, Chios, yes.
Do you know anything about this escape route and how it was organized, who ran it?
Yes, it was Greeks who were running it with a pretty high fee, but a lot of Jews were able to go. There were kaiks that took them.
Yeah.
Those were, they were working for the underground.
Well, now, was there an organization that,
Yes,
Elas?
it was, I think, Elas.
And did they hire Greeks to run the boats?
to run the boats.
And how did one contact somebody to say, I want to get out of Greece? How did you make your initial contact?
I'm just trying to think how we made initial contact, because I had we contacted somebody from EAM to bring over my uncle and aunt from Salonika.
To get them from Salonika to Athens?
To Athens.